This is a Takagi Marco Ultra M4, and the base is very wobbly, very loose. So something has happened down here in the base, and we're going to find out what it is and try to address it. So first thing we're going to need to do is take our cover off, but to do that we're going to have to take off the knobs off of the illumination, and if it's an M4 it's going to have a background illumination. So we'll need to take those off, and that'll be with a 1.3 millimeter Allen or .050 SAE to get these off. Once we get these off, take off these protectors. Turn around, you need to take these 4 Allens out, 2 on the sides holding the cover, and 2 here holding this cover. These are longer than these out here. Take that off. If it's still on your slit lamp, this cable is going to be connected, but this has already been taken off, so this cable has been removed. And these 2 screws taken out. Then we need to turn the slit lamp underneath the bottom, the back cover. There's also one more Allen screw. It's like 2.5 mil Allen wrench underneath it. Take that off. Go ahead and raise it on, and then pick your cover up and slide it out of the way. So as we look under here, we can see lots of things moving. These brass supports are moving, so they must be loose. Things could be loose here. And your spindle, lots of things. So we're going to have to take this whole section off to get access under here to check everything. So what we're going to need to do is take off these cables. Perhaps do is take a photo of what it looks like so you know how your wire configurations are on both sides, and then take it off. You'll need to take this nut off of the rheostat. Take these screws off. If you want to put a little mark on your Molex connector so that when you're putting it back together you'll be sure that you're putting it on right. There's only one way it's going to go on, but it makes it easier if you have a mark there. And once you know how that configuration is going to be, then you can go ahead and take your cable holder off and pull up on your Molex connector, and then do the same thing on the other side. Similarly here, if you want to make a little mark on the Molex connector, and notice how your wires are. They go underneath the plate, and your wire harness up there. If you want to make a little mark on each side of the harness, in case it moves, that you can put it back in the same exact place. I'm just going to leave these on because I don't need to take them off. Now that we have our wires out of the way, we can go ahead and tape them out of the way. Put a piece of tape up here to keep them out of our way. With these wires taped out of the way, we now need to take these off. Under here there are some springs, some support springs. It's probably better to go ahead and take those off and out of the way. And there's little covers on top. They might be tight, the screws. If you use your Phillips and tap down on the Phillips while you're turning it, that could pop those screws. Remove the covers. And then you can pull the little support springs out. There's one on each side. Do the same for the other side. Now we have both those support springs out of the way. I'm going to turn this to kind of balance the weight on either side. Now we need to remove the covers here. This may be loose, and this might have been your only problem, depending on how wobbly it was. But this needs to be tight. So we've got that tight. I mean, really tight. And if it was loose, then you might want to take that screw out and put something on the threads and tighten it up so that it won't be loose. We need to take these two Allens off. Again, this is a 2.5 mil. Push down on it, and you can remove this safety washer. Okay, with these things removed, we're ready to pull the top off. We're going to remove the top. The main spring is under here, so it's going to just be aware of that. It should just come straight up. Under here, this is where our little support springs that we took off earlier, that's where they'll go. So you didn't have to take them out first, but they would either be down here on the bottom or in here. And when we put it all back together, it's better for them just to be out of the way so that it'll be easier to line everything up and we can put them in later. All this needs to be tight. That screw needs to be tight as well as the Allen on the other side. Everything needs to be tight. Now we have better access to see what's going on. Why is everything so loose? If you want to take this spring out of the way, it's got a lot of grease on it, but it's going to be out of your way. I'm going to do that. It's just going to take it off temporarily. So we have these supports that are loose, and they shouldn't be. Everything should be tight in here. And so this is probably our issue. For whatever reason, these supports got loose and screws on top, and so because of that, it's affecting. Also 2.5 mil. Take these screws off this bracket, and if you get confused about which way it goes, underneath the screws it's concave in there, so you'll know that's where the screws go. This is flat, so this is how it's going to go when you put it back. Now these supports should have been tight, but they're loose, and the way to tighten them is there's a little groove in here, and you get a thin screwdriver and tighten them up. But if we tighten them up without doing anything to these threads, it's possible that it's going to do it again. So we're going to remove these and put some fingernail polish or Loctite on these threads so that the next time, so that it won't happen. It might not happen again, or at least it'll. So I'm going to go ahead and put some fingernail polish on these threads. Probably Loctite is better, but this is what we're going to do today. And I'm going to put a little bit down at the base. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. Okay. Both sides are in tight. Now we're going to put our bracket back on, and the same thing. If they were loose, it could happen again. So I'm going to go ahead and put some fingernail polish on these threads too. I'm going to put a little bit in the threads too. Got everything tight. Just going to put a little bit on the outside. We don't want it happening again. Now that we have all this, we can put our main spring back. You might want to check this to make sure this is tight. Make sure these posts are tight. Make sure everything is tight before you put it back together. And if something was loose, you should address it by putting something on the threads. And if you had wanted to, depending on how your mobility was going, you could have taken this spindle out, cleaned it, re-greased it, but it was moving fairly well earlier, so we're just, for our purposes, we're not going to do it. But if you had to, there's 3 screws. As you turn the gear around, you get access to the 3 screws. You can pull them out and you can take the whole assembly out, but we're not going to do that today. And putting it back together, I did notice that there's a lot of play in this spindle, but I don't have a replacement, so we're just going to use it anyway. Our wires are tucked out of the way. All we need to do is line up with our spring going in here, and then the 2 support rods where the springs are going to go. That's the only thing we need to aim for. And, of course, the spindle. Because it's so heavy, it should fall down pretty easily. You might have to guide it. If you want to tighten everything down so it doesn't swing, that's probably a good idea. Once we have it down, we can put our safety washer back on. Let it come up. Put our Allens back in here. Once our Allens are in here and tight, make sure this Allen is tight. It's a 5 mil. Make sure that one was tight. And then we can put our support springs back in on both sides. See how it goes down over the guides. And we'll put our little covers back on. Both sides. Put our covers back on. Check the movement and see, does it move? If it's nice and tight, then that's good. There shouldn't be anything rubbing, strange. It should all be lined up. Now we can put our wire harnesses back together. Taking our taped wires off. Since we marked our Molex, we can put it on quickly, easily, with confidence. Push it down till it snaps. Put your wire harness back in. And remember, everything is going to go underneath the plate. Put your screw back in. Wire harness connected. It's time to put our plate back on. And if you'll notice, there's a small hole there. that's going to coincide with the back of your switch to lock your switch in place. The washer. And that. And then the two Phillips. Make sure this nut is tight with your wrench. Be careful not to break anything while you're tightening. Be careful of this little LED. Be careful of that while you're tightening. You don't want to break that. Got all this secure. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Wire harness secure. Cable in the same path. Putting our plate on, it goes over the wire. That little hole will coincide with the mark on the rheostat. Put everything back on. Everything back on, tight. It's time to put our cover back on. Got it raised up. You slide our cover on in the front. We can put our screws on in the front. Don't forget to put your illuminating discs on top. Put your knobs back on, coinciding with where they should be. Turn your rheostats all the way off. Put your knobs back on, tighten them with your 1.3 Allen. Fit your Allen screw underneath the back bottom of the cover. Put that in. Put your two screws. The shorter ones go here and the longer ones go here. But if you have to hook your cable up, you're not going to want to put this cover on until you've got your cable up. So I think that's it. Make sure everything is tight and then check it. Nothing should be rubbing. Everything should be nice and solid. Now when we move our base, everything is nice and tight, so hopefully that won't happen again.